Hello, and welcome to Budget Commander. On this channel, we'll discuss Magic the Gathering topics with a focus on playing Commander on a budget. We'll cover things like deck building, top cards, deck techs, and more. Let's get started. Hey friends, today we have a Riku of the Two Reflections versus Feldon of the Third Path gameplay for you. The Feldon of the Third Path deck is focused on discarding big creatures from his own hand into his graveyard so that he can bring them back and then hopefully swing for the win with some big ETB or leaves the battlefield or dies triggers, just hoping to get a lot of value there. Riku of the Two Reflections. This is the PreCon deck, card for card. The goal is just to get a lot of value off of Riku, copy his instants and sorceries, make token copies of his creatures, and hopefully just win through having a lot of value. So both of these commanders are actually not too different. Riku's going to start us off by playing an island and passing the turn to Feldon, who plays a mountain, who passes back to Riku, playing a forest for turn. Passing back to Feldon. Very fair magic here. We have another mountain entering the battlefield, and then for 2 mana, Feldon's going to cast Cathartic Reunion, discarding a couple cards and drawing 3 cards. Then Riku's going to play an island for turn, pass back to Feldon, who plays another mountain, and casts Manalith, a 3 to cast Mana Rock. Just taps for any color you need, so probably red. And then we have Riku playing a forest, and for 3 is going to evoke the Aether Snipe. So it's going to come in, but when it comes in, it gets sacrificed and bounces the Manalith back to Feldon's hand. When Feldon untaps, plays a mountain for turn, recasts the Manalith, and then for 2 mana, casts Mycosynth Wellspring, which enters and allows Feldon to put a mountain from his library into his hand. Then Riku's going to untap, play a forest for turn, and for 4 mana, cast Garruk Wildspeaker, who has comes in with 3 loyalty and can either +1 to untap 2 lands, -1 to create a 3/3 beast, or -4 to give all of Riku's creatures +3/+3 and trample until end of turn. Riku is going to activate the -1 loyalty ability, bringing Garruk down to 2 loyalties, and putting a 3/3 beast onto the battlefield. Passes the turn back to Feldon, who untaps, plays a mountain for a turn, and then casts Tectonic Reformation, giving each of his lands pay red, and you can cycle it, which is great value there. And then casts Collective Defiance, escalating it. So for the first ability, Feldon's going to target himself, forcing himself to discard his entire hand and draw that many cards. And then for the second mode, he's going to choose to deal 4 damage to the beast, destroying it. Then Feldon passes the turn to Riku, who untaps, activates Garruk's ability, putting another beast onto the battlefield, and then casts Explosive Vegetation, fetching up a couple of lands to the battlefield tapped. Riku's going to pass back to Feldon, who then casts an Unstable Obelisk, a Mana Rock that you can pay 7 to sacrifice and destroy a permanent. Then we'll see Pia and Kieran hit the stack. When they enter, they're going to create a couple colorless Thopter Flyer token artifact creatures, and Kieran and Pia Nalar can sacrifice any artifact and deal 2 damage to any target. And then Feldon's going to pass the turn back to Riku, who untaps, plays a forest for turn. It goes to combat and swings the beast for 3. Feldon chooses not to block and takes 3 damage, going down to 37. And then activates Garruk's -1, putting another beast onto the battlefield. Second main phase, he'll cast Simic Skyswallower, a flying, trampling 6/6 shrouded creature, which means it can't be the target of any spells or abilities, yours or your opponent's. And then passes the turn to Feldon. Feldon casts his Dreamstone Hedron, a 6 to cast artifact that can tap for 3 colorless mana, or you can pay 3 and tap it to draw 3 cards, also sacrificing the Hedron. Then Feldon will tap the Hedron right away to put out Heraldic Banner, which taps for any color. When it enters, Feldon is going to choose that it gives all of his red creatures +1/+0. He'll pass the turn back to Riku, who untaps and goes straight to combat, swinging both beasts and the Sky Swallower. Feldon chooses to block the Swallower with a Thopter, not realizing that the Swallower has Trample, therefore bringing down Feldon's life total to 30, and then Riku is going to cast Intet the Dreamer, a 6/6 flyer that whenever it deals combat damage can pay 3 mana to put the top card of Riku's library into exile, and then at any time for free you can cast that card. So a lot of pseudo card draw to be had there should Intet be able to connect. Passing the turn to Feldon, he'll untap and then cast Jaya Ballard Task Mage, a 3 to cast 2/2 creature with a lot of abilities there. Can either destroy blue permanents, lightning bolt something, or deal 6 damage to each creature and each player. Jaya hits the battlefield, and then we see Feldon leave the command zone and enter the table, and then passes the turn back to Riku. Riku untaps, plays a forest, and then Alpha strikes, attacking with all the creatures. Feldon decides to block a beast with Pia and Kira Nalar, and Intet with one of the Thopters. The other 2 creatures will get in, bringing Feldon's life total down to 21. Both Pia and Kieran Nalar, as well as the beast, will die. Remember that Pia and Kieran are +1/+0 due to the Heraldic Banner. And then Thopter will be sacrificed in front of the Dreamer so that no combat damage is dealt there. Second main phase, Riku is going to cast Rapacious One, a 5/4 Trampler that's going to give some spawn, Eldrazi spawn, to Riku should the Rapacious One get in for combat damage. Riku will pass the turn to Feldon, who untaps and then casts Tyrant's Familiar, a 5/5 flyer with haste. However, it is a lieutenant, meaning that as long as Feldon is on the battlefield, the Tyrant's Familiar is +2/+2 and has, whenever Tyrant's Familiar attacks, it deals 7 damage to target creature defending player controls. Feldon will then move to combat and trigger the ability, dealing 7 damage to Intet, killing it off, and then can't be blocked, so Riku's will go down to 32 life. Remember, the Tyrant's Familiar gets +1/+0 from the banner. And then second main phase, Feldon brings back the Flametongue Kavu from the graveyard. When it enters, it'll deal 4 damage to the Rapacious One, killing it off. And then at the end of turn, the Flametongue Kavu has to be sacrificed. Passing the turn back to Riku, he'll untap, play a forest for turn, and then go to combat, swinging both of his creatures. Jaya Ballard will jump in front of the beast. The Sky Swallower will deal 6 damage, and Jaya and the beast will trade, bringing Feldon's life total down to 15. And then we'll see Elvish Aberration enter the battlefield, a 4/5 that can tap for 3 green. So a lot of ramp to be had there. Should you need it, want it, probably an X-Drop card would be great for that. And then passes the turn back to Feldon. Feldon's going to activate his own ability, bringing back Mirror Battlesphere from the graveyard. When it enters, it's going to create 4 1/1 Mirror Artifact creature tokens. And the Mirror Battlesphere can attack and tap those mirrors down, allowing him to deal X damage and gain +X/+0, where X is the number of tapped mirrors you control. So, triggers, we get a bunch of mirrors, and then Feldon goes to combat, attacking, triggering the Tyrant's Familiar, dealing 7 damage to the Elvish Aberration, and triggering the Mirror Battlesphere, deciding to tap 4 of those mirrors, dealing 4 damage, as bringing total of Riku's life down to 13 with the Tyrant's Familiar, Mirror Battlesphere, and the trigger on the Mirror Battlesphere, Second main phase, Feldon's going to cast Lore Seeker Stone, a 6 to cast artifact that can draw 3 cards as long as Feldon pays 3 mana and an additional 1 for each card in his hand. Then Feldon's ability is going to trigger the second time, forcing the Mirror Battlesphere to be sacrificed at end of turn, and then Feldon's going to pass. Riku's going to cast Hull Breach, destroying the Lore Seeker Stone. There are no... here's a misplay. Should have destroyed also the Tectonic Reformation. I didn't realize this, but could have targeted both, but probably didn't realize that it was on the battlefield, as Feldon's battlefield was so full at the time, and when you're playing with actual cards, battlefield kind of sometimes gets a little bit convoluted. Then we'll see Riku of 2 Reflections join the team here, and Riku's going to pass back to Feldon, who once again brings back the Mirror Battlesphere, triggering, creating a bunch more mirrors, and then go to combat, swinging. Tyrant's Familiar triggers, deals 7 damage to Riku, and then Mirror Battlesphere triggers and taps down all his creatures, all his mirrors, should I say, dealing 8 damage, bringing Riku down to 5. And then Riku decides not to block with the Sky Swallower, allowing the Battlesphere and the Tyrant's Familiar to get in, bringing his life total down to -15. As we see, Feldon moves on, and Riku gets knocked out. Highlights from Riku's deck. Rook Wildspeaker came out and made 3 3/3 beasts, which was great value for 4 mana. The Sky Swallower did a lot of work as a shrouded creature. Got in for a lot of damage. Unfortunately, it wasn't enough for Riku. We also didn't get to see Riku trigger making copies of any cards, so that was unfortunate. Although he was pretty explosive, continued to play big plays, just wasn't enough because Feldon was bringing back a lot of value cards. Collective Defiance was a big highlight in that it got to cycle his entire hand, and also kill a beast, which was not really... It was impactful, but not enough. Tyrant's Familiar did a ton of work, destroying a bunch of creatures, and so did Feldon. Just bringing back a couple Mirror Battlespheres is pretty devastating. So there's the standings after... Sorry, I think this is match 7, so I should have edited that, my bad. Feldon's going to move on. And next time, we'll have Chulane, Teller of Tales versus Agave, Guru of Spores. Hope you guys enjoyed this video, and enjoy the rest of your day. Peace! Thanks for watching. If you liked the video, you should like the video. You can subscribe by hitting the icon in the top left. YouTube thinks you'll like the video in the top right. Otherwise, you can check out one of the playlists on the bottom. Have a great day!